I guess the majority of the graduating class of Victoria, Texas, which is single engine at that time, went overseas to the 9th, and about 5% of us got stuck to being instructors. So I served as an instructor for, I guess, 6 or 7 months in Victoria and Matagorda Island for gunnery. And then I was transferred back to Coffeyville, Kansas to instruct there. And then from there to Randolph Field in San Antonio for more instruction. And from there to Houston, Texas. So that was all the instruction area. So that was all with the Gulf Coast Training Command. And I left from Ellington in Texas and Houston to go overseas to California. We went out to Salt Lake City. I was right here in Florida with 3 students in Florida up in north, and Drew Field up in north. And I landed, and the guy says, "There's a telegram for you to return immediately to Houston." I said, "Well, I wonder what that is." So we turned around that night, went back to Salt Lake City. We nearly ended up right there because the weather was bad again. And we land on one way, and some guy comes shooting across in front of us on another runway. It was a student from Kansas who was lost. And he came in on the wrong runway, and they didn't even have him on the radio. So I said, that nearly ended right there. So we went back to Houston and went through the routine and stuck 5 of us into a C-47 out to Salt Lake City. We had to go down in Denver because of snow. So we stayed 3 days in Denver. And then the jockey that was taking us out there got tired. He had a wife in Houston, so he says, "I got to get back." 5 of us checked the weather, and we said, "We're not interested in going. It's all ice." So we got another day because we didn't want to go with him. So the next day he says, "Well, I'll give you a guarantee. We'll go out, and if we run into ice, we'll come back." We went out to Ogden, Utah at night, and that thing iced up so bad. And I'm standing in behind the pilot, and I said, "If you don't mayday in a couple of days, you're going to change seats and go in the back." And I said to the engineer at that time, turn the anti-icers on. "You never heard such a racket in your life." We were standing right there in the middle behind the cockpit, and the props were icing up so bad, it was throwing all the ice into the fuselage. I hit the tank, it's empty. So I grabbed the mic and I said, "Hey," we went on a mayday right away, and they got us into Salt Lake City. And I got to give the guy credit. He got in there, boy, in bad weather. And we didn't see until the next morning. It's a bowl. Came in the mountains on instruments with a frozen foot. Snow was coming through the split windshield, and he had one boot, and the co-pilot had the other boot. And they had to take him out of the cockpit because he had a frozen foot, and they ferried him off to the hospital. So that was the second time we nearly didn't make it. And I had a bunch of students. We plowed up about 5 acres of Texas with the gear up with a twin engine, because we had a single engine going into the emergency field, which nobody was supposed to use except for an emergency. And the guy says, we've got a guy right underneath of us coming in. So we had to power off again and take off while we had a loaded aircraft. And it didn't fly on one engine very well. So we plowed up a lot of Texas ground, and all four of us got out very clearly. And I was the last one out. I had a damn strap on the flight suit, and it got caught on the quadrant. And I was the last one out, and that they did a wonderful job of strapping those suits. I could not take that strap off of there in a panic, you know. So I got out the back end of the airplane, tore across the field, ran right into a barbed wire fence, flipped right down on my butt, and the guy said, "You didn't see that?" I said, "How can I see the barbed wire? I was worried about that thing exploding, you know." So the next day, they said, back in the airplane.
That was a C-47?
Back the next day, instructing again.
That was a C-47 that you were in?
No, that was the 11s. We were using Beech 11s at that time.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I took I guess it was, it was the same students. About 3 weeks later, we had to go in a forced landing in Decatur, Texas, because we lost a prop. So he's the student's in the left-hand seat, and I'm sitting in the right. And we landed all right, got down, and I said, hit the brakes. I didn't have any brakes, not on my side, they only on that side. So we did a very nice job, went through the guy's fence, and got out of that one. All four of us got out again.